Actually, this video is going to be more of my concerns regarding the next terrorist attack that might happen inside the United States. And I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, but as of late, I guess maybe because Memorial Day weekend is coming next week, I've been thinking about it more and more. I'm not, you know, an expert by any means. I'm just a regular Joe who studies this area and basically has his own opinions and thoughts about certain things. But in regards to what I feel is upcoming, um, it is, I guess, long overdue because the last terrorist attack, successful one, was, of course, September 11th, 2001, and that was 24 years ago. The latest events that are happening abroad are any indicator about what could happen in return, or as they say, blowback. We are really going to see the shit hit the fan. Okay, again, I'm going to be try not to be all over the place here, so bear with me, right? With the latest events from the Biden administration and now the Trump administration, the second one here, current, we see basically one of the worst disasters in terms of geopolitics and, of course, foreign policy that I've seen since the Bush Jr. administration or the Obama administration. This administration here is wanton violence. It's not even systematic violence. I mean, what we're seeing just in Gaza alone and in Yemen, the biggest humanitarian crisis, along with North Africa, but what's going on, a lot of people are ignoring Africa, but they shouldn't, is it's just I haven't seen anything like this since Bosnia Herzegovina in 1995, 96, in terms of the egregious amount of war crimes that I've seen. And with each war, and it's funny because we have this technological advancement over many countries, precision strikes, drone strikes, which are supposed to lessen civilian deaths. And we have had more civilian deaths than we ever had. I think Gaza is a 93% civilian strike rate. And look, say what you want about Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, but they haven't killed en masse thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, who are left behind in buildings because the men have to go out and basically try to find food, water, and scavenge supplies. And they strike these buildings, knowing full well that they're filled with families and whatnot. The Israeli government knows what they're doing, with the full support of the United States. Yemen. Uh, Yemen is a hotbed of fundamentalism. I mean, that's where bin Laden was born. Al-Qaeda affiliates still are engaged in activities there. But then you have people that were against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Rightfully so. They're a criminal organization. That's where the essence of all jihadist ideology comes from, Wahhabi, right? Even though they allegedly are reforming because of pressure from the State Department in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. Hey, if you want, this is what the State Department basically did. Hey, if you want us to still protect you and hide information from any civil litigation in the Southern District of New York against the 9/11 victim families against you, you're going to have to do us a favor and really calm down things and modernize the country. And that's what the bin Salman family did. They took the country by force and basically said to the ulema there that they need to basically go back into the shadows and not be as antagonistic, or you'll face the execution squad. They haven't gone away. They're just basically in hiding, right? North Africa, the Congo, Burma, Libya, countries that haven't seen Islamic extremism since the days of Omar Bashir, when he was the president, and the leader of the National Islamic Front, Hassan al-Turabi, who hosted bin Laden in his country in 1992, basically are revisited with the Islamic State and al-Qaeda affiliates basically attacking the military there. There is a report that showed that they were dressed as, officers and attacking the villages. Now, remember what I said here, that they were dressed as officers and attacking, the civilians and the military there. We see this with Hamas, right? Hamas used to do this back in, say, the late 90s, early 2000s period, where they would be dressed as, first aid. And they would go to, like, an area in Haifa, in Israel, and attack using, a guy with a machine gun, shooting up like an area, small area, just, killing maybe 8 people and injuring, 20 others. And ambulances would come and they would get, the Israelis would come and, try and get these people in ambulance. Meanwhile, the ambulances drivers are Hamas operatives and they blow themselves up. Second ambulance comes, and they think it's and he blows himself. And what does this do? It's not the attack. It causes what? Fear, paranoia, distrust. Now, fast forward to the current period. What do the Israelis have? Fear, mistrust. Over who? Their Palestinian neighbors. Now, vice versa. The Palestinians, for decades, had this fear and mistrust of Israelis because they don't know when the next attack is coming. But remember, they don't have a military. They rely on these terrorist groups. That's why they exist, to defend them. And the Israelis can always attack them and say, you see, we're just defending ourselves. So it's a reciprocating problem that we're seeing here. Now, the point being is this, what I'm about to get into right now. I interviewed a former intelligence analyst who does interviews and, was engaged in a book, intently engaged in a book. Her name is Sarah Adams. And I interviewed a contact that infiltrated terrorist groups, and I interviewed him on a show, and it was regarding the book Al-Qaeda 2.0. Now, I read the book. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the intelligence was on point, and basically, it resonated with me because I always thought that this level of terrorism was far more effective than what we saw in 1993 or in 2001. Now, al-Qaeda had changed a lot since then. Al-Qaeda, under the leadership of bin Laden, and then Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, were always in your face. They would tell you before they even attack why they are attacking, why they have this vitriol to the West. And their attacks were much more grandiose in style. Nothing about them was secretive. They were out in the open. Bin Laden, even though he was a very quiet man, very demurred, couldn't say the same for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed or Ramzi Youssef or Abu Ghaith. Even bin Laden, to an extent, he did interviews. He did so many interviews. And then the Taliban basically had to tell him, listen, we got to cut down these interviews because, we're trying to fight for the engagement of the country against the Northern Alliance, the Uzbeks, Waziras, we're trying to fight against these groups to create a caliphate. And you're really fucking it up, right? By being out here and drawing attention. We don't need the West to invade the country. 9/11 happens. Boom. What happens? The United States gets involved. They go in the country and fight against the Taliban and al-Qaeda. Lasts for 20 years. And basically, the United States leaves. Taliban takes over the country in record time. Taliban basically tells al-Qaeda, Well, now, if you want to exist in this country because you're persona non grata everywhere else, bin Laden's dead, Zawahiri's dead, Mohammed Atef is dead, Suleiman Abu Ghait is doing life in an American prison, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's languishing in Guantanamo for 1,000,000 years, along with Mustafa Hawsawi, Tawfiq bin Attash, Ramzi bin Hashib, and Ammar al-Baluchi. All the top levels of al-Qaeda are gone. Saif al-Adil exists somewhere on the border of Pakistan, Iran, who knows? He's the undeclared emir, but I agree with Sarah Adams. I think it's Hamza bin Laden because he carries the bin Laden name, even though I think Saif al-Adil is much more a legitimate leader. Anyway, neither here nor there. But al-Qaeda now has to change and adapt to be much more effective. And how would they do that? By not being out there, by not being so egotistically driven to tell you what's inside their head. You know, there's a part in in Godfather Part 1 where, you know, they have this meeting with the Turk Sollozzo, and it's, you know, Marlon Brando, the Godfather, and his sons are there, and Sonny, played by James Caan, you know, really likes the deal made by the Turk about heroin, and it could bring a lot of money to other families. And, you know, the Godfather, Marlon Brando, basically disagrees. And James Caan is like, you know, no, Dad, we got to, and, you know, like, it's God, you know, Marlon Brando tells the character, and at the end, you know, Sollozzo leaves, you know, because the deal isn't being made. But then he says something to James Caan. He goes, "What's the matter with you? Don't ever let anybody outside the family know what you're thinking again." And why did I use that analogy? Is that's what the Taliban did to al-Qaeda, basically. Never let the world outside think what you're thinking again about plans. And so that was what the Transnational Council wrote in the book. William Archer wrote in the book, Sarah Adams and others, and, you know, through their intelligence, that what they gathered was that al-Qaeda was going to change the way the way they attack and way they plan and coordinate. And I think this is what the basis of the video is all about, is that my fear is that al-Qaeda will adapt. And I want to show you a scenario that is, you know, shared with what I read from al-Qaeda 2.0, and also by watching these latest committees of the last 3 years on C-SPAN. And I want to share some of these ideas with you. Sarah Adams was on some show, and I want to play this clip. It's not very long. And so, you know, they were talking about how would al-Qaeda attack? You know, what's their plans? And I thought this clip was very interesting. Take a look.
You guys think that they've sent at least 15, al-Qaeda alone has sent at least 1,500 people here in the United States.
Correct.
What do they plan on doing with them?
They have a 2025 multi-coordinated, multi-city plot to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden.
What? Okay, so I've watched you on podcasts. I've never heard that.
Let me repeat that. So that, all right, this is really important. Listen.
You guys think that they've sent at least 15, al-Qaeda alone has sent at least 1,500 people here in the United States.
Correct.
What do they plan on doing with them?
They have a 2025 multi-coordinated, multi-city plot to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden.
What? Okay, so I've watched you on podcasts. I've never heard that. Could you explain that more?
Yeah, essentially, so we're going to put a report on Monday, but essentially, al-Qaeda is actually who helped plan the Hamas attacks. The Hamas attacks is a dress rehearsal. So the Hamas attacks is the practice attack, and then the big attack is going to be in the United States and then in 4 countries in Europe.
Okay. You guys want to go home and load magazines?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking.
I hope a lot of people come into your shop and stock up. It would be smart.
Really?
Wow.
Yes.
No, it wouldn't, actually.
What's the time frame?
All we know is that the attack was planned for 2025.
I mean, I think instead of super bad, we should call you Spooky Sarah.
I do scare a lot of
It's
people,
fucking
but it's not
scary,
my
Sarah.
intention. I
I
just
don't
want
like the
people to be
humor
aware
around it.
so they can
It just
prepare.
Yeah,
cheapens
be aware
So,
and
all
prepare.
right,
the
back up. I'm
thoughts.
sorry. You said that it was actually Al Qaeda directing Hamas into the October 7th attacks.
Well, what happened is there's multiple groups involved in the plotting. So it was Al Qaeda, the Afghan Taliban, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and then obviously Hamas was the operational element on the ground.
And all those the same branch of Islam?
No.
No,
How's that?
actually, over time, basically, Hamas and Iran have grown into kind of the camp Al Qaeda's in. And a lot of this actually really happened. I mean, it's been happening for a long time. We actually even just saw it in the Libyan revolution, it was 2011. But they really all came together in the Syria fight. That's when a lot of groups started coalescing. You would even see like guys fighting with Al Qaeda, and then a few months later they're fighting with ISIS, and then a few months after they're fighting with Al Qaeda. And so I really think it was the brotherhoods from fighting in Syria that has brought us to this evolution we're at today.
So, okay, there is an active plot that's real for Al Qaeda and its operatives to do a October 7th style attack in the United States and 4 other European countries.
Yes, that's correct.
And or
Okay, now let me talk about this for a second. I think it's the other way around. Like I said, I could be wrong. I'm not Sarah Adams, obviously, but I think Hamas directed Al Qaeda to attack. And the reason why is this: who would know about guerrilla warfare in terms of how to engage in urban warfare? It would be Hamas, because that's what they've been doing, since their existence. How would they attack residents in a very condensed area, right? Al Qaeda doesn't have. Now, they used to train for this in the very early period. And this is before they became an international terrorist group. In 1991, 92, when they went to the Sudan, before they went to the Sudan, they would open training camps in 88, between 88 and 91, I'm sorry. Between 88 and 91, they opened up training camps in places like Kandahar and the Paktia province, okay? And these training camps basically were for Arabs who would engage in close quarter combat against the Soviets. Now, the original camp was the al-Masada camp, the lion's den, so to speak, is where al-Qaeda was formed from. People like Wael Juluddin and Mahmoud Salim, Abu Hafs al-Masri, Abu Ubaidah al-Benshiri, and with a direct line to the Haqqani network that, Sarah Adams talked about in that show, regarding Afghans, leaders that allowed for the Arabs to engage to train in their camps. So I think it would be a combination of Hamas and Al Qaeda working alongside together for a common goal. Now, the Syria uprising, where the coexistence of groups come from, like, Ansar al-Sham or the Islamic State or al-Nusra, which is an Al-Qaeda affiliate, where the president of Abu Muhammad al-Jalani came from, and now it's called the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group. But these groups always change the name because they're put on a terrorist list, and we have to attack them, and they change the names. Oh, it's a different group. No, it's the same thing. Okay, these are all Al-Qaeda affiliates, or Islamic affiliates, or affiliates of the Haqqani network, or a combination of the Muslim Brotherhood network in either Syria or Egypt, right? But these are major league organizations that have the smaller branches that branch out because of different ideological differences and whatnot, bickering, right? Anyway, when I read the book to Al Qaeda 2.0, I thought of exactly of my own darkest thoughts, because I always engage in the worst types of thinking, like the worst is going to happen. And what I read was concerning. And this is exactly how I would do it. That wouldn't be like a 9/11 style attack. I wouldn't just hijack a plane and crash it into the World Trade Center. I mean, if you want to make a point, that's how you make a point. But if you want to really cause fear, if you want to paralyze a city, you wouldn't even need much. And, Saram's basically said in that show there was like 1,500 Al Qaeda operatives inside the United States. I don't know if that's the case. I don't even think you need that much. Let's just cut that number in half just to save argument. Say there's 700. That's still a lot. Now, what I want to show you is basically a, something that I am very concerned about is that this style of attack that I'm going to show you would be far more effective. And if you're watching this video, please let me know. This is a map of 42nd and 8th. Now, if you're not from New York, in the daytime, this place is packed. In fact, there's an unwritten law with New Yorkers that real New Yorkers don't go into these areas because it's all tourists, right? This is like in the afternoon, and this is basically September of 2024. But in June or July, there is thousands of people here. Now, this is what I fear. Remember what I said about al-Qaeda and these jihadist networks in North Africa and in Gaza, what they would dress up like. Now, we have military and we have cops walking around here. We've had them since the aftermath of the September 11 attacks. They've been here ever since. They haven't left. Grand Central, if you ever go to Grand Central Terminal, they're in the terminal. That's another area I'd like to highlight. Okay. What I think would be an effective terrorist model. Now, this, of course, I'm taking a risk here because I'm giving an idea. Right? You put two people here. Two people here. Two people here. In what I would say is almost like a triangular effect. Or if you're going to have more operatives, a hexagonal effect. Here, 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 right? Now, this area, why I highlighted 42nd and 8th is because the blocks are very long. As you could see, very long. These are all big stores here. They would be, if they're, like, in other words, if you had two operatives with machine guns and you had people just basically cross the street, down the block here, traffic. We don't have many police officers anymore patrolling like they used to did under the Bloomberg and Giuliani era. Right? Crime is at an all-time high since the Dinkins administration, right? Right? Supposedly. Well, anyway, you would cause mass panic. And you would have what I would believe, if that were to come to fruition, hundreds of deaths. Hundreds. And all it would take was 6 to 8 people. That's it. Maybe even 5. And then when there's nothing left and they're out of bullets, or they would blow themselves up. No bombs, no planes, no C4. Al-Qaeda would change. They never do the same style attack twice. They always adapt. This scenario that I pointed out would be worse than 9/11. Now, okay, imagine this in 8 cities, major cities: Dallas, Miami, Los Angeles. Major cities, Detroit. You would, and they're all dressed like either cops or military or EMS. Now, it's not the attack to be concerned about. That's, you know, coincidental, right? It's what this would cause afterwards is what I would be more concerned about. This would cause people to be distrustful of who? Police, the military, first aid officials, hospitals, police stations, right? Um, People would never go out again. Now, this is a correlation with COVID, right? What did COVID do? It wasn't so much about deaths or the volatility of the virus itself. It was real, but it was about what it would be about. It's all about perception, viewing. What did the people do is a response? Did they go along with the mask mandates? Did they go along with the legislation that was created during it? Did they go along with the officials regarding what they should do and how they should act and how they should live? But the majority did. This is the big picture. How did people react? Well, they went to stores, they cleaned out the stores. They didn't know how to behave. They didn't fucking care. I got mines. It was all trivial things, toilet paper, bleach. Put it into perspective. Now, with this scenario that I just outlined, there would be mass panic. Now, imagine 8, 10 cities attacked like this. You would think the fucking world is coming to an end. And then when there's mass panic, you react on your emotions, and they're, usually exaggerated. And then what happens? Well, then you go after, you react on that. You see a cop coming to the door, it's a real cop. You're going to shoot him. You don't know, hey, this guy, he looked like a terrorist. And then what happens, and then military, because we still got, and you attack. What do you think was going to happen? Look, think about the big picture. There's going to be legislation created in that you are going to be the victim of it. Look what happened in Boston. Remember years ago, the Snarden brothers? They killed one guy, and it was one fucking guy. And I forgot the name of the town he was in. But what happened? The town, people don't talk about this. The governor and the military went into the police officers went into the town and basically did door to door without warrants, went inside these people's houses to look for this one guy. People forgot about that. I can't believe people allowed for that to happen. And that would happen here. Hey, we got to look for these terrorists. We're going to we don't need a warrant. And after the 9/11, there's so much in terms of invasive legislation. You think it was invasive then, it's worse with a scenario like this. Because now they could say that you're the terrorist for attacking our, first responders or our military. But they were just reacting because, hey, these terrorists were dressed as cops and military. Well, guess what happened days ago? We just saw a bunch of police officers' uniforms go missing. And I was, in a group chat with other 9/11 researchers, and I was just informed of an article that there was a couple of terrorist attacks on military installations here in the United States under the Biden administration. And I didn't know this. And they kept it quiet. Why? Right? October 7th is a test. I agree with Sarah. That's a test run about what could be happening here, where it fucking counts. Now, weeks or months afterwards, we're going to have people with cooler heads that are basically going to want to blame somebody. Now, I'm going to play a committee, a clip from the Armed Services Committee, regarding the FBI and counterterrorism threats inside the United States. Now, this is 2021. And I want you to watch this clip, and I'm going to add some thoughts to it, okay? Watch this clip.
I'm going to now turn to Director Wray, and again, Mr. Secretary, I'll ask you to weigh in on this as well. In the past 2 weeks, Iranian-backed terrorist groups have escalated attacks on U.S. assets in Iraq and Syria. As a result, the U.S. has engaged in several counterstrikes on Iranian-backed assets in Syria to protect our troops and equities in the region. Are you seeing an uptick in threats to Americans at home or abroad, and what are your agencies doing to increase security at home in light of these growing tensions? And are you concerned about potential retaliation here in the homeland due to the U.S. counterstrikes in Syria?
So a whole number of things packed into that. Yeah. First, we definitely believe that there's a heightened risk of potential violence here in the U.S., especially from lone actors inspired by any number of foreign terrorist organizations or by domestic ideologies in some way using the conflict as an excuse or a justification, as horrendous and misguided as that would be, to conduct attacks here against Jewish Americans, Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, etc. So we're definitely concerned about that, and we are seeing an increase in reported threats, whether it's bomb threats to synagogues, some physical assaults. I mentioned in my opening statement some of the arrests we've had. So we're concerned about that. Second, I am concerned, as I said in my opening statement, that foreign terrorist organizations, traditional, formal terrorist organizations, whether they be al-Qaeda or ISIS or Hezbollah, have all made statements that would indicate a greater risk of a potential attack here by them. We are not currently tracking an imminent credible threat from a foreign terrorist organization, a structured attack here or something like that, but it is something that we think heightened vigilance is warranted for. And when it comes to Iran and its strategic partner, Hezbollah, I think it's important for Americans to understand that even before this conflict, we're dealing with an adversary that just in the past couple of years has tried to kill a former U.S. national security advisor on U.S. soil, tried to kidnap and then kill an American journalist right smack in the middle of New York City,
False.
conducted a cyber attack, attempted a cyber attack against a children's hospital, and tried to interfere in the last presidential election, as Director Ratcliffe and I called out at a press conference in the fall of 2020. That's all on
now,
top of
I played this clip just to show you the big picture about what's coming, right? Now, when the cooler heads prevail, people want to start blaming people. They're going to blame two areas. Again, don't take my word for it. I'm just giving you my thoughts. It's all speculative here. All right. Nothing, I don't have primary intelligence regarding anything I'm saying here. I'm just giving you my thoughts. They're going to blame Iran. All right. We've been trying to engage with Iran for years, Israel anyway. And the Israeli lobby is a powerful lobby that spends millions of dollars on the House and Senate to persuade favor to the Israeli government, not to the United States. Okay. Nevertheless, Iran has always been the focus point. Well, what has happened during the shift between, say, 2010, right after the Arab Spring of 2011, Iran was now becoming in the picture. Now with 9/11, 10 years passed, 11 years gone, now to 15, all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is no longer the terrorist threat. Now it's Iran. Right? First it was Iraq. But the real threat is Saudi Arabia, the Gulf. It's where these groups' ideology come from. It's not coming from Iran. Okay? It's not coming from Lebanon. It's not coming from Syria. These are countries that didn't have a terrorist problem. Did they have a leadership problem? Sure. Do we have a leadership problem? Fuck yeah. All right? Now, we're not going to basically, call for the overthrow of Donald Trump, although some people would like to, or Joe Biden, but we call for the overthrow of the imams in Iran. Why? Because Israel said so? Because Saudi Arabia in the dark said so? For ideological reasons? For political reasons? Or just for outright hatred and to keep the war machine keep going? That's what this big picture is all about. Now, of course, the second area is they're going to blame the left. You'll know that I'm not left and right. I don't believe in that. I believe that people are victims of ideology. Nevertheless, the people of the right are reactionary. They speak before they think. They act before they, construct a thought. The CIA uses right-wing groups, ultra-Salafist, ultra-nationalist groups, to subvert the threats of like socialism and communism. They use these groups because they're very reactionary. They're very violent. And so I think what's going to happen here is that Donald Trump and leaders in underneath him, especially from the pulpit, John Hagee and Kenneth Copeland, and then you have the Heritage Foundation, they're all going to basically come out and say, it's through the Biden administration that all these that our borders were porous, and that this allowed for these operatives to come inside the United States. And we need to do something about this. We can't let Biden become president. We can't have a leftist president. We need to basically now eliminate the electoral process, or something like this. Something like this, or there'll be sporadic attacks on leftists somewhere, where the right will basically come out and basically fire on them, or something. There'll be small pockets of violence, and what will happen because of this is that the state will get involved and have the National Guard create legislation, coordinate these groups, probably, have them under a, like a curfew of some sort, just like with COVID, the parallels. Leftists have to stay indoors until 6, or, we'll have anybody who voted conservative. How would this go about? Like, this would be madness, right? And people would be what? Mistrustful, paranoid of each other. Like I said in the beginning of the video, that's what this is supposed to create. And because when you're not thinking straight, and when you think that the next person around you could be the threat, you can't trust nobody. You can't talk to nobody. You can't coordinate with anybody. And the state will take advantage of this. When you talk about invasive properties, look, they're already gotten all our text messages, all our emails. They know which way we voted and who we didn't. They know what we're thinking. Even though that's a lot of fucking metadata. They had a 20-year head start. But, this is a fear of mine, is that, I'm not saying all this is coming true, or even any of it's coming true. I'm just throwing out some ideas out there, like what this could do, a scenario like that could do. The aftermath, because I'm always thinking like a foreign policy analyst. I'm thinking 10 years, 5 years down the road, the long run. That's what I try to play for. And before I end the video, it all goes back to why terrorists engage in violent activity, or in terrorism in general. And, to go back to bin Laden, to go back to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, or Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, or Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, or Muhammad Atta, or, Ridwan Isamuddin, the Hanbali, the bin Laden of Southeast Asia, or, Jang Jangali, the leader of the Abu Sayyaf group, and, with Iman Samudra, and, those people that bombed the Bali bombings of 2002. What did they all have in common is, then the Snarder brothers in Massachusetts, these ISIS groups and al-Qaeda groups, they have in common is that, they're attacking us for a reason. And I always go back to the Ramzi Youssef statement, he gives out a statement before he gets sentenced to 1 million years. And, he tells you why, he engaged in terrorism. But I won't use that. So I'm going to use a video of bin Laden. And this is December of 2001. And it's a short video. And it goes back to, why the United States is evil, right? And I'm not saying that I agree with bin Laden here. I just want you to have an understanding of why they're attacking us in the first place, so that maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't just these terrorists. It's about why these terrorists are engaging in violence in the first place. It's a reaction. I always use that quote by Saul Alinsky. The action is in the reaction, right? Now, I'll have to read it to you because I had to cut out the audio so that, I wouldn't get, because anything you're showing with bin Laden with audio or al-Qaeda in audio, they say you're using hate speech. So I'll read the transcripts to you. Those who keep repeating the same gossip about socialized terrorism. All right, so wait a minute. I forgot to share the, all right, here we go. All right. Those who keep repeating the same gossip about socialized terrorism without considering its consequences should be careful. Our terrorism against America is a praiseworthy terrorism in order to repel the injustice of the oppressor, so that America withdraws from its support of Israel, who kills our children. In fact, the matter is crystal clear. Why don't you understand? The leaders of America and the West repeatedly declared Hamas, al-Jihad in Palestine, and other fighting groups, and elsewhere to be terrorist organizations. If self-defense is terrorism, then what is legal? Our self-defense is no different from theirs, and our battles is no different from the battle of our brothers in Palestine like Hamas. We fight for the sake of there is no God but Allah. Now, again, it's about foreign policy. The point is made that the terrorist groups like Hamas, or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or al-Qaeda, or the Islamic State, or the Haqqani Network, or the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, or the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, or the Islamic State in Khorasan, or Abu Sayyaf and Jemaah Islamiyah, or Abu Sayyaf is no more, but al-Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula, they all share a common bond, is that they are existing because of the West's and foreign policy. And if you can't see what's happening in Gaza, if you can't see what's happening in Yemen, if you can't see what's happening in North Africa, if you can't see what's happening in Libya or in Syria, then you can't have an understanding of why. And you'll be just like those people after 9/11. Why did they hate us? It's time to start thinking, and cooler heads prevail. All right, listen, thanks a lot for taking the time out and watching this video. And please leave a comment and share your thoughts. You might disagree totally from me. I enjoy all types of discourse, please. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.